Welcome to yet another edition of TV Africa News. This is Africa Today. As always, Najma Luima. But first are the headlines. Museveni lifts a suspension on democratic governance facility. Return to work or resign, government tells striking teachers. Patrice Lumumba's remains return home. Bull FC Vipers SC to start continental adventure in August. Welcome once again now the news in detail. President Museveni has finally accepted to lift the suspension on the activities of a democratic governance facility in Uganda. Government suspended the activities of DGF over what was termed as financing of subversive activities. We have more.
In January 2021, President Yoweri Museveni directed the suspension of the activities of DGF, the largest pool of donor funding to non-governmental organizations in Uganda, which is financed by Denmark, Ireland, Austria, UK, Sweden, Norway, and the European Union to facilitate equitable growth, poverty eradication, rule of law, and long-term stability in the country. However, following back and forth meetings between government and development partners, government accepted to have the suspension lifted. Sources within DGF confirmed the development, adding that they met with the president yesterday and he had directed for lifting of the suspension. Museveni has since confirmed the development through his Twitter handle, saying that he hosted the Danish Minister for Development Cooperation and the two discussed a number of bilateral issues, including agreeing to lift the ban on democratic governance facility to run till December 2022, with government represented in the decision-making structures. Government suspended the activities of DGF over what was termed as financing of subversive activities. In a letter to the Finance Minister Matia Kasaija, President Museveni asked him to explain how his ministry authorized a 500.8 billion shillings fund to operate illegally in the country without the involvement of cabinet.
Government has released a bombshell on striking teachers, asking them to return to class or resign from their work. The directive comes a few hours after President Museveni reportedly met with the Ministers of Education, Finance, Public Service, Prime Minister and the Vice President over the matter. Nalugo reports.
Teachers under their umbrella, the Ugandan National Teachers Union, earlier this month announced a sit-down strike over what they described as discriminatory, the proposed salary enhancement for their science colleagues. Efforts by government to woo the teachers back to class have proved futile. However, in a letter to the UNATU General Secretary, the Ministry of Public Service Permanent Secretary Catherine Bitarakwate said that whereas government is committed to ensuring salary enhancement for all teachers, irrespective of the disciplines, this can't be met currently because of the scarce resources. She, however, insisted that government can at this time only meet the increased salary demands for only science teachers as their arts colleagues wait a little bit longer. The Public Service Permanent Secretary said that whereas it is within the rights of the teachers to strike, the current industrial action is not backed by any law. The Permanent Secretary informed UNATU that there have been reports of schools closed by the teachers as part of the ongoing strike, a situation she said can't be tolerated. To this, she said teachers are now directed to return to work by June 24th without fail or else they will face action.
A plane carrying the remains of Congolese independence hero Patrice Lumumba flew to his homeland on Wednesday, more than 61 years after his assassination. Large crowds could be seen gathering around Shumbe Airport in central DRC, braving the sun and the heat to take part in this historical moment.
Belgium handed over the last elements of the hero's corpse at truth to his family on Monday in a move towards reconciliation after the atrocities it committed in its former colony. Lumumba was killed just a year after he became the first elected Prime Minister of Congo in 1960, and the investigation is still ongoing. Francois Lumumba, one of Patrice Lumumba's sons, said that it's moving at a time of discovering his own and also strengthens their determination in the fight that Patrice Lumumba led. The coffin and an accompanying delegation that flew to the central province of Sankuru, where Lumumba was born in the village of Onalua. After a 9-day trip around the DRC, Lumumba's coffin will be laid to rest in mausoleum in the capital Kinshasa on June 30th after 3 days of national mourning.
Let's take a quick break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, The Right to Know. Nigeria's electoral body, the Independent National Electoral Commission, has reported an unprecedented increase in the number of Nigerian youth who are coming forward to be registered to vote in the upcoming general elections. Let's take a look. With the outcome of recent primary elections in the country, Nigerians have shown renewed interest in registering, collecting, and all transferring their permanent voter cards ahead of next year's general election. According to INEC, there was a voter base of over 84 million for the 2019 election and hopes to add at least 20 million new voters to its existing voter base. However, there are efforts by individuals to ensure massive registration and collection of PVCs ahead of the polls. Some youths say they have decided to put things right by registering to exercise their civil rights. Onyeka Nwaizu, a civil servant, said that he believes the factor that motivated the surge is a result of a new movement in the country. A coalition made up of 17 support groups had recently warned the Independent National Electoral Commission against disenfranchising millions of Nigerians ahead of the 2023 general elections. In response to the election body, INEC has extended the closing date for registration to August 31st, 2022. Malawi law students are demanding Chinese man wanted for racism to face justice in Malawi. The fugitive Chinese national wanted in Malawi for filming children singing racist chants in Chinese was arrested in neighboring Zambia on Monday, according to an immigration official.
According to Malawi immigration spokesman Pasquale Zulu, the Chinese national was arrested in Chipata, Zambia after fleeing the country through uncharted routes. Loke is accused of exploiting children in Malawian villages by filming them making racist remarks about themselves in Chinese phrases they did not understand. He then sold the videos on Chinese social media in a business uncovered last week. In one video, a young child aged about 9 is heard saying, "I'm a monster with low IQ." In a statement last week, the Chinese embassy in Malawi condemned the acts of racism by one of its citizens. The statement stressed that the Chinese government had zero tolerance for racism. Malawi's Foreign Affairs Ministry told the media that they will engage their Chinese counterpart on this issue. Malawi and China have had diplomatic relations since 2008, when Malawi established ties with China over Taiwan.
Moving on, the European Union has urged Ethiopia's government to lift restrictions on fuel supplies to the war-wrecked Tigray region, warning that shortages were crippling the distribution of emergency aid. Tigrayans have spent several months without access to basic services such as electricity, telecommunications, internet, and banking. The 19-month conflict between Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government and Tigrayan rebels has driven hundreds of thousands of people to the brink of famine and left more than 9 million in need of food aid, according to the United Nations. After the government announced a humanitarian truce in March, aid convoys have slowly made their way to Tigray for the first time since mid-December. The EU's Commissioner for Crisis Management, Janice Lenasith, said after a visit to Tigray's capital Mekele that fuel shortages due to government restrictions have severely limited access to life-saving supplies, even as aid warehouses are full. The EU envoy told a press conference in Ethiopia's capital Addis Ababa that more fuel is needed because without it, even food assistance that comes to Mekele cannot reach rural areas where the needs are highest. The conflict has driven a wedge between Ethiopia and Western nations, with the United States ending preferential trading status for its longtime ally. Last week, Abiy said he was open to possibility of peace negotiations with the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Let's once again take a quick break. We will be right back. Welcome back. You're still watching TV Africa News, the right to know. In our business news today, Prince Charles and his wife Camilla laid a wreath on Wednesday at a memorial to the 1994 genocide in Rwanda during the first visit to the country by a British royal. The royal couple touched down late on Tuesday in Rwanda, where the Prince of Wales is representing his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, at a Commonwealth summit this week.
The Prince of Wales and his wife Camilla posed a silent tribute at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, the final resting place for more than 250,000 victims of the massacres almost 3 decades ago. The royal couple signed a note of remembrance to accompany a wreath of white flowers. They also spoke with survivors of the genocide, in which some 800,000, mainly Tutsi people, were murdered by Hutu extremist forces over about 100 days between April and July 1994. The leaders of many Commonwealth nations are expected in Kigali in the coming days for the meeting of the 54-member club of mainly former British colonies. Rwanda, a former Germany and Belgian colony, joined the Commonwealth in 2009 and has in recent years moved closer to the English-speaking world. Inaugurated in 2004 during the 10th anniversary of the killings, the Kigali Genocide Memorial has an education center, a garden, and a 1,200-seat amphitheater that hosts workshops, plays, and cultural films. The victims' remains are laid out in 3 main rows, and more have been buried as new graves are uncovered around the country. At the burial ground, the Wall of Names is dedicated to victims of the genocide.
In our health news today, with the world food crisis worsening due to the ongoing war in Ukraine, the focus is now turning to Africa for solutions. However, experts say it is still too early as the continent is not yet ready. We have more.
Jacob Svensson, an expert from Stockholm University, said that the Green Revolution that dramatically changed the productivity and production, particularly in Asia and also in Latin America, has not really had the impact in Africa. Climate change is also an important factor. The Horn of Africa, for example, is facing its worst drought in decades. The United Nations warns tens of millions of people on the continent are at the verge of starving. Many flee in search of a better life as some make their way to Europe. Between January and May this year, Frontex recorded the arrival of some 86,000 illegal migrants. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a slight decrease in the arrival of illegal migrants in Europe, but it was temporary. Katia Batista, a professor of economics at the Nova School of Business and Economics, said that the route that had the most deaths was the Central Mediterranean route, where people arrived from West Africa across the Sahara Desert and had a lot of problems, especially in Libya. The food crisis, migration, economic and political reforms in Africa are some of the topics discussed at the two-day Nova Africa conference.
In sports, Uganda's representatives in CAF interclub competitions, Vipers SC and Bull FC, will start their campaign for the 2022-2023 in August. According to the African Football Governing Body, the competitions will start on Friday, August 12th. Ahumaza with more.
This was confirmed by the Confederation of African Football in a communique that outlined the entire season calendar for both the CAF Champions League and CAF Confederation Cup. The group stages for both competitions and end before November 18th for clubs to free players who represent their countries at the Qatar 2022 World Cup. The knockouts will not start until February 2023 after the African Nations Championships tournament to be held in Algeria. Vipers will play in the Champions League, while Bull FC on its continental debut will feature in the Confederation Cup. Last season, Ugandan champions, then Express FC, were hosted by Al Merreikh at the first round hurdle, while URA got eliminated by Al Masry of Egypt in the second round.
That was the news. Thank you for always keeping it TV Africa. Please do stay tuned.